How is it out there?
I think there's room for improvement.
Big Bang Theory had not only given us a goofy group of super genius scientists, Penny and Howard, but also spawned two really fun shows while they were at it. I mean, I love Young Sheldon, and to be honest, Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage is also not a very bad show. But nothing could have prepared my expectations of whatever the premiere of Stuart Fails to Save the Universe had in store for us. Now, if you were expecting this direct spin-off to be full of Bazingas, let me warn you that this show is pretty much not like anything we've ever seen in the Big Bang Theory franchise before. For starters, it is literally set in a different multiverse, where reality is definitely unraveling, and the person who's supposed to save it from falling apart is Stuart Bloom, of all people. With Stuart Fails to Save the World, we do not just deviate from your conventional sitcom format, but dive right into a genre-bending sci-fi comedy. While most of the faces seem to be familiar in Stuart's world, everything else is nowhere close to being how we remembered Pasadena to be back in 2019. Having said that, let's discuss what exactly happens in the premiere of Stuart Fails to Save the World and try and figure out where the spin-off show can go from here.
You gotta focus.
Do you have an identical twin brother?
So, the show opens in a dark, shady world as a rabid dog with glowing red eyes is barking incessantly on the street. Just then, a tall man in a dusty long coat walks through the ruins, only to step on a zombie hand popping out of the ground before walking into the comic center. As it turns out, this was the only store in all of post-apocalyptic Pasadena that somehow made it through and was still standing amidst the ruins. Basically, imagine if Big Bang Theory was set up in a Mad Max world, minus all the desert sand. The only difference here is the power vacuum, which is filled by a guy who Immortan Joe would eat for breakfast. Anyway, we'll come back to that later. So, Stuart, now bartering his comic books in exchange for the necessary supplies that would help him survive this dystopian rendition of Pasadena. Soon, the door of the comic center springs open, and the tall man walking in turns out to be Bert Keebler, the ex-geologist at Caltech and Stuart's best customer, as he asks for a copy of Batman issue 608. In near mint condition, Stuart gives it up only after he has his fair share of cans of corn and fancy feast. Everything in this world is surely out of the ordinary. For starters, the two nerds arguing inside a comic center against the possibility of Hawkeye being worthy enough to be an Avenger ends with a guy with the arrow stabbing the other dude and instantly killing him. I mean, Big Bang Theory did not even show a fly being murdered, let alone a person, so everything truly feels like a fever dream. But what is even weirder was the reaction Stuart and Bert had after they witnessed the murder in broad daylight. Stuart simply screamed at the guy for ruining the floor he had just cleaned, and then threw him out of the store before asking Bert to help him remove the dead body by throwing him into a dimensional rift inside the store. Given their apathy towards all the blood, gore, and murder, it almost seems like they're pretty habituated with circumstances like this. However, the real shocker came when the post-apocalyptic comic store owner gets visited by a relatively better-looking Prime version of him. Prime Stuart tells the alternate version of him that this apocalypse can be traced back to a malfunctioning quantum entanglement device, and the people who are to be blamed for the current state of the world were none other than Howard Wolowitz, Leonard Hofstadter, and Sheldon Cooper, who apparently created this device, which in turn ended up malfunctioning and by extension screwed up every universe within the multiverse. This ended up fracturing reality and opening many dimensional rifts in the process, because Stuart was present when the quantum entanglement device screwed up the world, and so, according to his other version, it was now on him to track down the device and fix all the universal wrongs. In fact, Prime Earth Stuart even tries to tell his other self on how he is supposed to fix everything, but the banter between Bert and current reality Stuart delays the conversation, only for a dimensional glitch to create a garbled message that derails the instructions that Stuart 2.0 was giving on how to fix the machine. Before long, this Stuart is zapped back into whichever universe he came from, thus leaving the current Stuart and Bert from this dystopian reality with a quest without any clear instructions. Now, when has a comic nerd ever shielded away from a quest to save the world? That too in a dystopian reality? Nah, that's just too enticing to pass up on. Before you know it, The two boys decide to wing it by making their way to Caltech in order to track down the malfunctioning quantum interference device. While they're on the road, we realize just how terrible life is in this reality. I mean, sure, they're definitely surviving, but only in between the constant barrage of the undead, gigantic moths, scavengers, and the random mysterious voids that keep appearing out of nowhere. Every day in this wasteland is a fight to stay alive, and even a small string of floss comes at the price of a can of corn, only for the same string to be shared by both Stuart and Bert. Yeah, I know. Gross! Anyway, as they walk through the marketplace while making their way to Caltech, the duo comes across a bizarre sight of Penn and Teller putting up a show of juggling small feral animals in exchange for cans of food. Given the scarcity of resources, they were clearly not happy when Bert hands them a small can of food and expresses their rage by dropping the feral rats on the ground and squishing them in the process. Stuart and Bert then walk past the roast bowl, only to be ambushed by road bandits who turn out to be his ex-love interest, Denise. As it turns out, Denise has now found comfort in the arms of an ex-military guy named Gary, and together they have been staying alive by robbing people. Of course, she's also working on her screenplay during her free time. Stuart then tells her about his quest, and while the two initially do not believe him or Bert, they still end up joining them outside Caltech so as to prevent them from getting killed. Now, Caltech is currently under military siege, so breaking in is nearly impossible. But given Gary's experience in the army, he comes up with a plan to distract the military guards while Bert, Stuart, and Denise use it to roll underneath the supply truck entering the premises and covertly hide until they make it in. Of course, it takes about 2 seconds for things to go south as Gary's tactic to cause a distraction gets him shot almost immediately, and Denise, Bert, and Stuart end up being caught. While Denise is still unraveling from Gary's death, the group is taken to the university inside Bert's old geology classroom, where they are all shocked to meet our very own charming astrophysicist Raj, who is not doing very well. He really looks close to being a vagrant mad scientist who had not had a proper shower, a haircut, a shave, or even human contact in a very long time. After rambling like a madman for some time, Raj explains how Sheldon, Howard, and Leonard's quantum interference device completely altered the universe, its history, and every existing reality when it malfunctioned. Raj also speaks of a certain evil one who has been holding him prisoner at Caltech for many years, especially because he had figured out the math that would help the world go back to being right again. He even recounts how he was once riding an elephant to his wedding, and now he is being forced to take care of his business in a bucket. Honestly speaking, Raj's fate feels especially cruel considering this version of the character had seemingly achieved the happily ever after that eluded him in the original series, where he was the only member of his friend group who never found love or settled down. Unfortunately, when the world went to dogs, his perfect life went along with it, as his bride was devoured by a giant moth right at the beginning of their honeymoon. Now he lives in fear of the supreme leader who rules over Caltech with an iron fist, and ironically, this megalomaniac turns out to be Barry Kripke. Having said that, the return of Raj's character makes sense within the story. Among the original group, Raj is the only one who has the astrophysics knowledge that is needed to understand a device capable of damaging parallel realities, because he could examine the machine, discover that its calibration is wrong, and can actually correct it. That is probably why Barry has him imprisoned. Anyway, as Barry blasts into the room in a crisp dictator's outfit and goons carrying guns, we find out that once the world fell apart, he was quick to take control by seizing all the guns, food, and women for himself. Not sure how he did that, but whatever he eroticized his way through clearly worked in his favor, as he is now the Grand Caliph of South Pasadena, Flint Ridge, and Monrovia. Kripke soon asks Denise to join his harem of women and warns her that any refusal of his advances would end with her being executed. He then has his goons take her away, but makes the mistake of putting the boys in Bert's old classroom together. After Stuart spirals at the thought of losing Denise again, Bert saves the day by finally harnessing the power of geology, as he ends up making grenades from the potassium rocks and water available in the classroom in order to blast their ways through the halls. It is funny how a geologist turned out to be the most practical fighter in the room. As the bodies keep piling up, our unlikely heroes keep pelting their makeshift grenades at every military goon trying to stop them. Meanwhile, in a different room, Kripke later attempts to convince Denise to join him by telling her that ruling a post-apocalyptic fiefdom is very lonely, but she would rather be killed before sleeping with him. Kripke then proposes a hot shower and a nice lunch before Denise could decide her fate, and so she pretends to agree. But once he unties her, she immediately attacks him with a few punches and runs out of the room after a short but friendly greeting to the guard. As the other group races through the halls to find the machine that ended up causing this mess, Denise reunited with Stuart midway before the group finally reached the quantum interference device. It does not take long for Raj to discover that its calibration is off, and so he begins to try and repair it. However, Kripke blasts into the room with a gun in hand and immediately shoots Raj, as he had no intention to restore the universe back to normal. That reasoning makes sense because Barry is now a ruler and he is enjoying the kind of powers he never had during his old life. Repairing the quantum device would erase his kingdom and return him back to an ordinary life where Sheldon and the others would regularly walk over him. So, shooting Raj was Barry's best chance at stopping the group from fixing the device, as nobody else had the caliber for it. Raj's death definitely comes as a shocker, as he dies without even passing on any instruction to the group on how to save the world. But luckily, he still left behind the instruction sheet, which helped Denise and Stuart to put their heads together in order to get the machine up and running. Of course, they did something wrong, as it seemed like the device was about to explode. As Denise ran to take cover, Stuart, Bert, and Barry were sucked into another reality, which looks seemingly normal. They again end up inside a normal comic center of Pasadena that does not stand in the middle of ruins. In fact, they're all dressed normally, like their old selves, and after they look outside, there are no visible monsters, zombies, scavengers, or marauders in sight. The episode ends as Stuart and Bert are relieved to know nothing went wrong, but neither of the three notice or feel the green crystal implants embedded in the back of their necks, which surely cannot be good. There's also the fact that Denise is left behind in the dystopian reality of Pasadena, which again separates her from Stuart, just as their old connection was flaming up. Keeping everything in mind, I think the next episode in the upcoming week will definitely start with Stuart trying to find a way to save Denise, especially because he believed she had been dead for a long time before the events of the first episode. He finally has the hope of some form of happy ending in terms of romance, and I fully expect him to make it work this time. Plus, I also think Denise deserved her own survival thread, so maybe the next episode will see parallels of them trying to figure out where the other is and how to get them back. I also think the green thing on their neck is some sort of a simulation because, come on, since when was there a gazebo outside Stuart's comic store? The scenery looks like a shot right outside of the Star's Hollow Town Square in Gilmore Girls, which surely does not fit the current aesthetic of this survival comedy. So what if Barry, Kripke, and Stuart went in through some wormhole only to get stuck in a worse situation where they cannot differentiate between what is real and what is not? Moreover, the quantum entanglement device is also missing, so there is surely something fishy going on here. This inevitably means that Denise would have to play their knight in shining armor and pull them out of whatever unicorn shitting simulation they are stuck in. I would also like to mention that the show killed off Raj way too easily, which is not something longtime fans of Big Bang Theory would take very well. But given how multiverses, time traveling, and alternate realities work in general, fixing the malfunction within the quantum entanglement device could end up resurrecting him and bringing things back to normal. In fact, Bert, Stuart, and Barry could even meet the alternate versions of Raj or Leonard, or even Howard, in this new, seemingly normal reality that they're stuck in, which surely opens up the narrative to go in a whole different direction. Irrespective of everything, I surely expect a lot of campy bloodshed in the future, but that is just my 2 cents. What about you guys? Do you think Stuart has what it takes to save the world? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comment box down below.